We'll give everybody about 5 more minutes to get in. How's everybody doing tonight?
Great. Thanks, Patrick.
That's good to hear. How do my eyes look on this camera? Can you see if they look bloodshot or not?
No,
Yeah.
you look fine.
Okay, good. I had
But
LASIK.
it's cutting off the top of your head, though, strangely. There, that's better.
They are a little red, actually.
I had LASIK surgery on Thursday, so my eyes are taking time to heal.
They look fine here.
Good. And I'll keep the camera on.
You had both eyes done?
Yes. I was quite blind in both eyes, so it's nice to be able to see in the morning.
Ah, great.
All right, we'll give everybody just a few more minutes to get in, and then we'll get started.
You have to wear reading glasses, Patrick?
That was the reasoning behind getting LASIK. If I had to wear contacts and reading glasses, I'd rather just have to wear reading glasses. So that is coming. I'll start using again Vuity eye drops, try and push that down the road, but I have a pair of readers now.
Join the club.
Yeah. All right, we'll give everybody just a couple more minutes to get in. Give everybody just one more minute to get in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Irith, glad you could join us from the Rio, Northern California, and saying hello from Los Angeles. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Patrick Botts Forbes. I am the LAFD CERT Central Bureau Coordinator, and this is our third Wednesday of the month continuing education training. Tonight's topic will be on situational awareness, how to not become a victim. Tonight's topic is going to be a little more philosophical than it is tactical or strategic, but this all leads into developing a well-rounded volunteer responder. Because what you don't see will get you in trouble every time. And we tell each other and we tell people, newcomers to the program, people who train with us, that situational awareness is key, because if you don't see the hazard, then you're going to step into it, or you're going to become the victim because that hazard is going to get you. And so we place a very heavy emphasis on this. In fact, the community emergency response team training teaches you that we don't bring a victim to an incident. And the reason for that is because people get hurt at incidents all the time, not just because of the hazards, but because they don't see the hazard. They can't avoid the hazard, and then they become a victim of the hazard. What are hazards? They could be anything: distracted drivers, construction, fallen or falling objects. If you're walking underneath something and you don't see it coming down on top of you, scaffolding, for example. Somebody throws something out a window or something off the top of a roof. Fallen objects, so something has fallen and you don't expect it to be there, you end up tripping on top of it. Down power lines are a big one. There's numerous stories about cars that have crashed into power lines, into power poles, take the lines down, and then rescuers come and they become electrocuted by the fallen power lines. Open manhole covers. This is a big one. They exist, and if you're not paying attention, you don't see the caution tape, you don't see the barricades, you may end up falling into one, and we've seen YouTube videos of that all the time. And then wild animals, dogs, coyotes, bears, skunks. I remember watching news footage of Meatball the bear in La Crescenta, just walking along the sidewalk and just wandering around, helicopters following it. And you see this kid on his cell phone. He's just texting away, and he gets maybe about 10 feet from the bear and looks up, and you can just see the look on his face. Oh shit, bear. And he turns around and runs away. But he wasn't paying attention to the helicopter above him. He wasn't paying attention to what's coming up in front of him, and almost, ran face to face into a bear, which may have ended poorly for him. We don't know for certain, but those are the kinds of things you want to be aware of. And this is where situational awareness comes into play, is making sure that you see what's coming, that hazard, that threat, that thing that's unexpected, and making sure that you have time to plan to avoid it or mitigate it. Now, I want to talk about assumptions. Assumptions are actually something that we all make, and we make them every day. Assumptions often have a negative connotation to them, but the reality is that we can't live our lives without assumptions. For example, I assume that when I flip on the light switch, lights are going to come on. I assume that when I turn the faucet, water's going to come out. This is based on living in the United States in a major city, but in some parts of the country, in some parts of the world, those are not good assumptions to make. And certainly, what happens when you turn the faucet on and water doesn't come out, or it comes out a different color than you expect? Major cities have had that happen. What do you do then? If you're not paying attention, you might drink that water, and who knows what that's going to do to you. Other assumptions we make every day: other drivers are going to follow the rules of the road. We all know that that's not true, but yet we make that assumption. And relatively often, that's a good assumption to make. And you have to make that assumption. You have to assume that the other drivers are going to do what they're supposed to do. but it's still an assumption that you make, and sometimes it proves to be wrong. A good assumption, the Great Gatsby put this in the book, The Great Gatsby put this into perspective, is other drivers are going to see me even if I don't see them. The story of, I forget her name, but her life was about, well, other people are going to watch out for me, so I don't have to pay attention for them. And then she literally runs into someone who also is not paying attention. So we need to be aware of those kinds of assumptions and what happens if they're not, if they turn out to be false. A good assumption that we all make is we will make it home safe from work or school. Today will be like most days. Tomorrow will be like most days. And when I go to bed tonight, I will wake up tomorrow. These are all assumptions that we make. And for the most part, they always come true. But what happens when they don't? We need to make assumptions because we have so much going on our lives that if you have to think about every single detail, every little thing that's going on in the world, it becomes too much. And so you live your life with a certain base settings or basic assumptions that for the most part will always be true because they have always been true. And these assumptions are built on our life experiences. If you lived in a place where the power is iffy at best, or there are rationing power or water, then you don't know that when you turn on the lights will come on. And if you grew up there, your assumption is not that when you flip the light switch, the lights will come on. You will have a different assumption. If you don't live in a place with running water, you don't have a faucet turn, you're not going to have the assumption that when you turn the faucet, the water will come out. So I'm going to make it so people can't unmute themselves until the end of the meeting. Then we'll take questions at that point. And depending on where you live, your socioeconomics, the education that you have, your family support and upbringing, and quite frankly, just plain luck, these all determine what assumptions you make. It's your life experiences. All of these have to do with how you live your life and what you expect to happen on a day-to-day basis. And everyone's assumptions, everyone's life experiences will be different. But for the most part, a lot of us, at least in Los Angeles, will have a very similar set of basic assumptions. And some of us will have different ones here and there. 99.9% of the time, these assumptions are going to be correct. And again, if you don't make these assumptions, life becomes very complicated and very tedious. If you have to think, okay, what am I going to do if the light doesn't come on? Or what am I going to do if the water doesn't come out of the faucet when I turn it on? What am I going to do if I'm driving and someone doesn't follow the rules of the road? We have enough concerns and stress in our life that we make these assumptions so that we don't have to worry about every little single detail. But we really do need to understand where these assumptions come from. And it really is, you know the saying, assumptions make an ass of you and I. Well, that's only true if they're wrong. For the most part, everyone is going to make these assumptions and they're going to be right. But it's when you make a wrong assumption that problems happen. Good assumptions are necessary to live. Good assumptions are based on current information. Good assumptions are based on past information that's still good. But sometimes wrong assumptions, or rather, sometimes that information becomes invalidated, that old information. And making an assumption based on that turns out to be wrong. So in that sense, we really do need to reevaluate our assumptions quite frequently. If you live your life with those same assumptions that you had when you were 12, and now you're in your 40s or 50s, your life, you're going to have a series of wrong assumptions quite often, just because things have changed. Not only has the world changed, but you no longer live with your parents, probably. You're having to go to work. You're probably you have a family of your own. So it's really, you have to constantly reevaluate and determine what assumptions are still good and what assumptions am I going to assume are still valid. What becomes dangerous is when we let these assumptions lead us into complacency. If we assume that things will always be the same, then they become dangerous. And quite often, good assumptions become wrong assumptions. When an assumption becomes wrong, you have to be ready. You have to be ready to respond to the new reality. What you knew to be true is no longer true. And if you're caught off guard by this, you have to react. The difference between responding and reacting is that responding means that you're seeing the change happen and you're prepared to make an intentional action to adjust accordingly. Reacting, on the other hand, it's purely instinctual. You're taking action without thought or intention because you didn't get the chance to anticipate needing to make that change and needing to adjust your actions. And so reaction is generally a bad thing. And what we want is response to a change in your situation, your change in your environment. The first thing that you want to do really is understand the nature of your assumptions. First of all, what are your assumptions? You're going to have a lot of them. You're probably never going to know every single assumption that you're going to make, but start looking at your life and think about what you're doing and think, what am I assuming? And then why am I assuming this? More importantly, what happens if these assumptions turn out to be wrong? And then what will I do if I'm faced with a wrong assumption? How will I change my action? What will I do to prepare to respond to this change in the environment, change in my surroundings, change in my life, so that it doesn't become a problem? Now, you have to understand that you can never plan for all eventualities. You can think about, well, I can do this if this happens, I can do this if this happens, but if something that you didn't even consider even a possibility happens, there's no way you could plan for that. And so you don't want to get wrapped up in the minutia and overthink things, but have ideas, have concepts, have a few possibilities so that you can gravitate towards the closest possibility, whatever happens to be more true than you are currently expecting. And you really do have to constantly be ready to adapt. The saying "Semper Gumby," always be flexible, comes to mind. One important thing is you really don't want to fixate on what you think should be happening. It's tunnel visioning. It's becoming stubborn and hard-headed. You think, okay, well, I need to cross this bridge to get to work, but the bridge is closed. Well, I need to cross this bridge to get to work. And sometimes you see this. You'll see police have shut down something. They put up barricades, and you see somebody plow through or try and drive around the police. And it's not because that they're being malicious, it's because they can think of no other reality where they do not cross this bridge to get to work. And so the idea that somebody's telling them they can't do this just doesn't make sense to them. And so they react by doing something that is dangerous, not only to the police officers who are trying to stop them, but possibly to themselves because the bridge has a giant hole in the middle of it, and you're going to drive through the barricades or around the barricades and straight into the hole. So you never want to double down on your assumptions. You really want to see, okay, my assumption is wrong. Now I need to change. Now I need to do something different. Now I need to respond accordingly. And that's where using situational awareness to anticipate how to respond comes into play. Situational awareness, quite simply, is being aware to changes in your environment. First of all, you need to know what's normal. Normal has a bad connotation to it oftentimes, but normal is what is expected. And then what's different? How is it different? Why is it different? And when did it become different? And these are all different questions, but they're all relevant for different reasons. If something changed a minute ago, that's important. If something changed an hour ago or a day ago or a month ago, then that may be a different reaction or different response that you're going to take. When something happens right now in front of you, it's harder to anticipate that change. But if something happened a month ago and you simply weren't aware of it for a month, that's kind of on you. So you really do have to be constantly aware of what's changing around you, and then make sure that you know and you don't get caught up by it so that you can respond accordingly. Always be aware of what's in front of you, what's behind you, what's to the left, what's to the right, what's above you, and what's below you. Always pay attention, look around. Don't block the world out. So many times we see people, joggers, who are running with headphones in both ears. They have noise cancellation turned on. They have their music blaring. So they are focused on where they're running to. They're not looking around to see what's coming at them from either direction. They've blocked out all sense of sound. If someone's screaming, there's sirens going on, they're oblivious to that. They can't hear it. This makes their reality very narrow and very dangerous if their assumption, which is, I'm going to run the course that I always run and nothing is different. I'm going to make it home safe. If that assumption turns out to be wrong, they're not going to see it coming. So you really want to look around occasionally. So you're walking, driving, do figure eights. You're looking, don't fixate on one point where you're going, but kind of look around, look up, look to the left, look down, look to the right. That's not even an eight. Look up and to the left, down and to the left. Just kind of follow. If you follow that pattern, you're going to have a good grid search of everything in front of you and to the left and to the right and above and below you. Same thing when you're walking. Now, you don't need to constantly be rolling your head. You're going to hurt your neck probably, but just occasionally, glance around. Make sure that what you expect to be there is really there and that nothing is different, or worse, nothing is now a hazard. And listen to the world around you. If you're going to be out and you're going to enjoy your music, most of us are not wearing those big clunky headphones anymore. Most of us have earbuds. Well, they're stereo. They go in each ear, and you can have one out at a time, typically. So if you're walking out or you're running, jogging, just have one earbud in. And noise cancellation is great, maybe on an airplane. But if you're in the street where there's cars, there's vehicles, there's construction going on, noise cancellation can actually be a detriment to you because you don't hear something that you would normally have heard at a much greater distance away before you get right on top of it. So consider that before you turn on your active noise cancellation. And your sense of smell, it's quite critical because a lot of times what's hazardous has a distinct odor. Um, and it's not normal. It could rotten eggs. Natural gas has the smell of rotten eggs, and for actually a very good reason. Natural gas is naturally odorless. The gas company injects a scent into natural gas when it goes into the pipes, so that if you smell a gas leak, or if there's a gas leak, you can actually smell it. There's a lot of hazmat out there, especially malicious stuff that smells like fresh or cut grass or fruit. It smells fruity, or it smells like hay. If you're walking around the city and you're smelling fresh cut grass and you don't see anybody mowing a lawn or mowing anything, that should trigger some sort of additional sense, situational awareness. You should go, that is not normal. That's not what I expect. What is causing this? If it's something nefarious, now at least you're paying attention and maybe can get out of there before it becomes a hazard to you or worse. And as I mentioned before, you really don't want to hyper focus on any one thing. If you're having a conversation with somebody and you're focused on them and only them, they feel engaged with you, and that's great, but you've blocked out the world around you. You don't see what's coming. And the two of you could get hit by a car that has lost control, and plows into the two of you. But if you're paying attention and you're looking behind the person you're talking to and they're looking behind you, and one of you may see this thing coming and be able to alert the other to get out of the way before it happens. But if you're fixated on the person you're having that conversation with, you're blocking the world out and you won't see it coming. Same thing when you're on your phone. Oddly enough, being on a phone with earbuds in is actually just as dangerous as holding a handset to your head and holding that, and that's because we're so involved with that conversation that we're still concentrating on it, we're still focusing on it, we're not paying attention to the world around us. So try and avoid having conversations where things may become dangerous. You really want to pay attention to not only what is going on around you, but to the others around you. If you see someone who is, wearing a red suit and a yellow vest and has face paint on, and there's a bunch of police running the opposite direction, um, this probably isn't normal. This probably is warranting some sort of attention. And if you're oblivious to it, you may be walking right into whatever bad thing you don't want to walk into. So pay attention to the others. Okay, that was interesting. I wonder if my co-host did something over there. I'm sure he'll never admit to it. Um, Make sure that if something is amiss, something doesn't seem right, you're paying attention to it, because we all get those things. It's um, you just get that gut feeling. Something just doesn't feel right. Listen to your gut. Pay attention to what's going on around you. If someone is looking shifty, someone is looking like they're sweating and their eyes are darting back and forth. They look very nervous. Pay attention to this person. Now, maybe don't, focus on them, because now they're seeing you focus on them and you become the center of their attention, but be aware of them and maybe distance yourself. Um, keep one eye on them. Don't stare at them, but just kind of keep them in your field of vision. If they do something that looks threatening, or they do something that causes you to get scared, then get out of there. There's no reason that you need to stay in a place where you don't feel safe. And that's all about paying attention to what's going on around you and listening to your gut feeling, because it may be right. And if it's wrong, no harm. You got out of there and there was no threat, you're still safe. You didn't cause a problem. We talk about using situational awareness as a how to not become a victim. But what does a victim really mean, or being a victim? A victim has something happen to them that's typically outside of their control. Something bad happened to them. And this could be an accident. It could be something malicious. It could be an act of God. You're walking along and a brick hits you in the head. Or you're walking along and there's a gust of wind and a branch embeds itself in your stomach. It's not too much you can do about this. Maybe if it's really windy or there's a hurricane going on, don't walk outside. If there's an earthquake, we say that it's often safer inside, and that's why we don't want you running outside while the earth is still shaking, because things are flying off buildings. But some things can be foreseen and a lot of things are unforeseen. And that's not to say that you could do anything about them or that being a victim is bad. The reality is that everybody becomes a victim at some point in their life of circumstance. And it simply is the reality of things. If you don't go through life ever having been a victim, you lived really a blessed life, and I'm a little jealous of you. But it's not about, you know, blaming the victim, but we want to understand what we can do differently so that we don't become a victim, and certainly we don't become a victim of the same circumstance more than once. There are sometimes actions that you can do to avoid becoming a victim, and sometimes you don't think you need to take those actions and it leads to you becoming a victim, or you do take action and it's not sufficient enough action to avoid becoming a victim. You see something coming, you move out of the way, but you don't get out of there. And now you're involved in this and become a victim of the incident when you should have been running the opposite direction. But you tried to do something, and you just didn't do enough to avoid becoming a victim. So we really want to do lessons learned, and it's always good to learn from your own mistakes, but it's even better to learn from the mistakes of others. So that's why watching the news, paying attention to what's going on, um, not only at the local level but at a much broader level, understanding what's going on in the world, is so critical, because bad things happen to other people. And if you can take action in your own life to make sure that you mitigate these bad things, then maybe you don't become a victim of it too. The question is, what actions can you take? And how much of an action should you take? Because sometimes it doesn't make sense to take these actions, and you're doing needless things just to avoid something that will never happen to you. And that's a little on the paranoia side. We don't want to become paranoid about things. We just want to be a little more cautious and take appropriate action to mitigate or avoid something that could happen to us and is more likely to happen to us than not. We want to really avoid the victim mentality. The honest truth is that bad things will happen to good people, and not all bad things can be avoided. But if you prepare for the unexpected, you can at least be hopefully aware of the bad thing and mitigate or avoid it. And that really comes to considering possible scenarios ahead of time. You think, okay, well, I know the way to work. This is the way I go every single day, 5 days a week. And it's the only way I know to get to work. Then something happens on your road and you can't take that path. Now you don't know what to do. But if you think, okay, I know there's 5 different ways I can get to work. I can go the back way, I can go the side way, I can do surface, I can take the freeway. Then if something happens along your normal route, you have already thought of those possibilities, and now you can respond and take appropriate action and not become a victim of that lack of pre-planning. And I mentioned this earlier, you really want to learn if you do make a mistake and you encounter a scenario and now you have to fix it, make sure you don't make the same mistake twice. Learn from your lessons. That victim mentality, though, you want to make sure that you don't become subject to it, because by and large, the world is not out to get you. You may have a lot of bad things happen in your life, but generally speaking, it's unfortunate circumstances, not something malicious, someone intending to, you know, do you harm. I always say that I would, if something happens, I always bet on ignorance or incompetence rather than malice. If somebody does something and it hurts me, typically it's not because they intended to hurt me, it's because they did something that they shouldn't have been doing. And I'm just happened to be in the way of that bad thing that just occurred. For the most part, there's always something that can be done about whatever bad thing is about to happen or whatever scenario you're in. However, sometimes all options are bad. And sometimes the only thing you can do is mitigate the worst possible outcome. So you really need to think about it as, what can I do to make this better? Not necessarily, I'm a failure because I didn't avoid this. Sometimes there is no avoiding it, and you just need to do what you can to minimize the damage and then move on with your life. And if you can see it coming, you can do something about it. I mentioned earlier, you want to prepare to respond and not react. So really, how do you be situationally aware? And we see this all the time. And most of us are probably guilty of it. I can definitely tell you I'm guilty of it. It's, we're thinking about what we're doing. We're thinking about what we're going to be doing. We're thinking about the future. We're not living in the moment. We're not paying attention to what's going on right now around us. We're thinking, okay, what am I going to have for lunch today? What do I have to do at work? What do I have to do when I get home? I have this presentation that I have to give at 7 o'clock, and I still need to finish the slide deck, and I'm not paying attention to what's on the road. We want to avoid running on autopilot. Autopilot is where your body just does something and you don't think about it. Every action should be a deliberate action. You really want to think, okay, I'm doing this for this reason. I am getting up, I am putting my clothes on, I am putting my clothes on in this order. I am getting in the car, I am turning the engine on, and that's not to say that it really does need to be that mundane, but it's, every action should have a reason behind it. And if you ever get to the point where you go, wait, what did I just do? How did I just get here? That's you being on autopilot and completely unaware of the world around you. This comes up particularly when you talk about if you're doing first aid, or if you're doing first aid and you help somebody, you have what's typically called the Good Samaritan Act that protects you. It says, because out of the goodness of your heart, you decide to help somebody in exchange for no reward of any kind, and you stayed within your training and your abilities, you can't be held liable for rendering that aid if something goes wrong. It doesn't say they can't sue you. In the state of California, you can sue anybody for any reason whatsoever. So when you take action, you always need to be prepared to defend yourself and justify your action. Hopefully, it's not defend yourself in court, but you should always be aware of what you're doing. I did this, I applied direct pressure, I pulled out a bandage, I decided not to apply any kind of triple antibiotic because I didn't know if they're allergic to it. So I applied direct pressure, I wrapped the injury, and I continued applying direct pressure, trying to stop the bleeding. I can justify those actions. I can explain why I did what I did. If they decide to sue me for not putting triple antibiotic on them and they got infected by the injury that I was trying to help them not bleed out from, then I can say, well, some people are allergic to triple antibiotic. The person was unconscious. I couldn't ask them. I wouldn't trust them if they didn't even know if they were allergic to it. So I just didn't put triple antibiotic on because that was the safer course of action. That's my defense. And theoretically, it should get thrown out. But who knows what happens? All I'm saying is be aware of what you're doing. Be aware of the justifications behind it. Always make deliberate actions. Always do things with intention. Don't run on autopilot and do things because, and then not be aware that you even did them. That's what's going to get you in trouble. That's what's going to lead to problems where you're unaware of the situation and you're now in the hazard. Additionally, and this is the reality of things, it's don't assume that every day, don't assume what you do every day is what you're going to do today. You just look at the news, and unfortunately, there was another shooting on the news today. The people who were involved in that shooting didn't expect to be in that shooting. So sometimes bad things happen, but maybe people saw what was going on. It wasn't some random shooter coming in and shooting up the place. It seems like it was an argument between two people that escalated and then led to gunfire. You see two people arguing, maybe it's not safe to be there. Maybe you want to start to move away from the situation. Be ready, have escape routes planned. If somebody pulls a gun and starts shooting wildly, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Start thinking about that. When you walk into a store, do you know where the emergency exits are? Or do you only know the exit you came in from? If somebody comes in behind you and starts shooting, and you haven't thought about this, and we've seen this happen before, unfortunately, the reaction is to run back towards the known good. This is where I came in from. This is where I'm going to go out from. And that's where the shooter is. And people run right towards the shooter, and they don't have to do anything. They just spray in the direction people are running from, towards them. If the lights go out and smoke fills the air, what do I do? If the earth starts shaking and I get disoriented, where are the emergency exits? Where are the fire extinguishers? Where is there an AED? Pay attention as you walk around wherever you are. Take notes of these things. Okay, there's an emergency exit there. There's an emergency exit there. There's a fire extinguisher. There's an AED there. Somebody drops in front of you and you render aid and you begin doing CPR on the person and you yell, go get the AED, it's over there. At least you're sending them in the right direction. Versus go get the AED. Where's the AED? I don't know. You find it. That doesn't help anybody. So that's really where situational awareness comes into play is something happened. Today is not yesterday. Today is not what happens every single day of my life. And now I need to adapt. Now I need to respond. But I know where the exits are. I know where the fire extinguisher is. I know where the AED is. I know where if things start falling off the roof, off the ceiling, I know what I can get under to protect myself so that I don't become a victim. And unfortunately, just because you live in a nice neighborhood doesn't mean that it's always 100% of the time safe. 99.9% of the time it's safe. It's that 0.1% of the time when something happens unexpected, someone decides to come in and make it unsafe. That's when you need to change. You need to respond to the change in your environment. And as much as we want to assume that everyone is going to get home safe, you need to ask yourself, what happens if I can't make it home safely? What happens if the bridge is closed and that's the only way I can get home and there's no other way? What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? If there's an earthquake and I'm not at home, or we can't get home because the roads are closed, there's a fire that's blocking the entrance to our cul-de-sac, where do I go? Where does my family know to go? And where are we going to meet up so that we can make sure that we're safe? But if we can't contact each other, we all know where to go. What is our backup plan? And that's really what you need to start discussing with your families is what is the backup plan? I mentioned earlier, it's important to learn from other people's lessons. If someone has experienced something that didn't go well for them and they had to adapt, and they can tell you about it and you can learn how they adapted and learn, okay, if this happens to me, I may never have anticipated this. I may never have experienced this, but someone told me about what they did and I remember that and now I can do it too. So I don't have to think about it or I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I don't have to come up with that idea on my own. The saying is, united we stand, divided we fall. And that's really what the community emergency response team is all about, is working with your neighbors, to be strong during a disaster, be strong when things are not normal, work together so that you all survive better. And your neighborhood, your community continues to exist after whatever disaster just occurred. Unfortunately, a lot of us have pride. We don't want to admit when we've made mistakes. We don't want to admit that we're wrong about it, but pride makes no one stronger. You don't hear that, someone can lift 1,000 pounds with their pride alone. You have to see it. It actually has to happen. And pride is an afterthought. Pride is, well, I don't want people to think that I'm weak, that I'm fallible, that I've made mistakes. I need to show them that I'm Superman, but even Superman has a weakness, or a couple weaknesses, actually. The honest truth is no one's perfect. You are going to experience problems in your life, and let's be perfectly honest. Most problems that you experience in your life, other people will also experience in their lives. We live in the same city, may live in dramatically different parts of the city, but for the most part, we go to work during the day, we come home at night or in the evening, we have lunch, we have dinner, sometimes we have breakfast. Maybe we get to enjoy the weekend to do something like a cert drill. But a lot of us live similar patterns. And so the problems we experience are very similar. And so talking about what we did and how we got around these problems is a good way to learn from each other's mistakes so that we also don't make those mistakes. And sharing leads to trust. And really, if you're talking to your neighbors and have to rely on them after an earthquake, or even, hey, I'm going out of town for a week. Can you get my mail? Can you can you feed my dogs? Can you keep an eye out? And if something happens, something weird happens, you see someone suspicious or you smell something funny, give me a call. That's trust. And that's something that has to be developed. And you need to learn to trust your neighbors. You need to learn which neighbors you can't trust. But you need to understand, and sharing helps build that trust. When that earthquake happens, it's going to be us and it's going to be our neighbors. And if it's only us, if it's only me, myself, and I'm going to be a lot worse off than if it's we as the neighborhood together, united, and working together to overcome problems. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and allow people to unmute themselves. Don't unmute yourself, but go ahead and raise your hand if you have a life lesson that you would like to share that you think can help other people avoid the same kind of problem that you ran into. Jeffrey.
Thank you, Patrick. This is a great presentation. Situational awareness is very important. When one thing that we learn in search training and Red Cross training is that if you run into a situation, you get hurt, you can't help other people. So we stress that it's important that you take care of yourself, because if you have great intentions to help other people and you don't, and you hurt yourself, you can't help other people. I think you mentioned earlier in the presentation about an incident that happened a bunch of years ago where a car had run into a phone pole and water was leaking around the car, and bystanders ran into the water to help the pedestrian get out of the car, and they were shocked and killed, and 3 people were killed there. And then when the fire department came, even some of the fire engines were injured, but they took care to not run into the water and get electric shock and get killed. So it's important that we all take the time to stop. When a situation happens, stop, take a breath, and think. We get people on the Rose Parade all the time, and they run to help people. They want to be helpful. They want to do it, and that's a great thing to do. But we stress them. It's important that when you come to a situation, nothing is going to be bad enough that you have to actually run and act immediately. You can take your time and take deep breaths and figure out, look at the situation and evaluate what's happening, and then act. And then the other thing is that communication is another thing that's very important. When you are in a situation, part of situational awareness is communicating with other people. When we're on a deployment with CERT or Red Cross, we need to, and we're out doing damage assessment. We need to communicate with the base to let them know that where we are, so that if something happens, that we can have backup with them. So we never act alone. We're a team. So that's what I want to say.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. And I want to add to that story. Some of the firefighters who were involved in that actually said that it was because they saw unfortunately, the victims who didn't survive, who were electrocuted, that they knew there was a problem and were more careful about approaching it. Otherwise, they too might have actually walked into that. Now, they probably would have not run into it, but the power was so strong, the electrical current was so strong that they could actually feel it through their boots. Then they have insulated boots that protect them. But that was how dangerous that situation was. And it was unfortunately seeing the dead bodies, or the victims who wanted to help, that probably saved the lives of those firefighters. Mitch.
Yeah, hi Patrick. I wanted to comment on the situational awareness when you were saying, you said what is normal. So one of the things that I'm a situational instructor, a situational awareness instructor for active shooting. So one of the things we teach is when you said that, what is normal, which was, I mean, your presentation is so spot on. I'm going to hire you to give some of my presentations. It was great. You talked about everything, but what is normal? Okay, so when you're going to the growth, in your mind, you set a baseline of what should be normal. What are you going to see there? What that is normal? People are going to be shopping. People are going to be having a good time, and you set that baseline in your mind. When you get there, you look to make sure that baseline is correct, and that everything is normal, and then you look for anomalies. What is out, like you were pointing out the Joker in that thing. That's, it's an extreme example, but it's a perfect example, because you're going to look for that anomaly. Well, if it's summertime and I'm at the Grove and everybody's in shorts and t-shirts and walking around, and I see a guy in all black or a big trench coat wearing a backpack, I'm going to pay a lot of attention to that person. Because it's not normal in 100-degree weather to be wearing a trench coat and heavy clothing. So those are the things you want to look for, those anomalies. You want to keep your head on a swivel, like you were saying, that figure eight, but you don't want to be freaky about it. You just want to just not focus on one thing. And you said it many times in your presentation, which was perfect. So head out, you're going to a grocery store. What do you expect to see that's normal at that grocery store? You walk in, if everything matches up, perfect. You're great. Just go through it. But as you're walking through the aisles and you see something that's not normal, you should be aware of it. And like you said, then you think about your exit plans, or what you're going to do, what actions you're going to take. So that was just awesome. And everything you said about situational awareness at an emergency plays into being safe just in your everyday life. Running, I was laughing about the earplugs and runners, because I go ape shit over runners that have 2 earplugs in it when I'm jogging and I see them and they have no clue what's going on that. So everything in your presentation was spot on. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've seen it up in where I live. I'm driving around. It's 2 o'clock in the middle of the day, and there's a guy out with his dog, and there's a coyote 25 feet behind him. And he is not aware of that coyote, and his little lunchable dog is also not aware of the coyote that's coming up right behind them. So that's one of the things, you don't know what's out there that is dangerous. And so, hopefully I alerted him to the coyote, and oh yeah, coyotes come in more than one. Usually they come in pairs or in packs. So if you see one coyote, look around. There's probably another coyote around. And I've seen them where I've seen one in the middle of the road, and I look up on the hillside behind me. There's the other coyote.
Criminals are like that too, but okay.
Well, you think about like Jurassic Park, the Velociraptors, where you see one, but you don't see the second one that's coming up on your peripheral. All right.
There's a comment about how situational awareness, or how does situational awareness play into an emergency situation, in a hazardous situation. I think you should, you can comment on that. I think it has everything to do with a hazardous situation.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read it. The question is, how does situational awareness play into during a search and rescue in a hazard-filled environment? And Chin answered this, but I'll go ahead and give it my own spin. It's if you watch the professionals, they teach this. If you're an EMT or you take CERT, you learn that before you get to the incident, you do an assessment, you do a size up. What am I expecting in there? Are there hazard signs? Are there placards on the building that say there are explosives? There is something in here that reacts poorly to water. There's something in here that will kill you if it's uncontained. And if you see that, then you don't go in unless you're trained to deal with that particular kind of hazard. If you don't see any kinds of signs, then that doesn't mean that there's nothing bad in there. It just means that you didn't see a sign. So you constantly reevaluate as you go in, and you're going to call out and you're going to ask if anyone is in there and can come to you. Because if you can get them to come out of the situation and you don't have to go in there, then that keeps you safe and maybe gets them out as well. And sometimes, if we're in a bad situation, we need to be told to come out of it. And that's what we see happen over and over again. When you do triage, come to the sound of my voice. And then you assess the people as they come towards you. You say, okay, this person looks healthy. Okay, this person, they're pale. They're sweaty. There is something sticking out of their leg. I need you, sir or ma'am, to go sit over there, and just hang tight. We'll be with you in a minute. You look perfectly healthy. I need you to come with me. We need to. Who else is in there? Were there any injuries in there? Find out, what happened, get an idea of what's going on, and then use the able-bodied to help. If you're CERT volunteer in a disaster, if you're a professional firefighter, you're not going to be doing that, of course. But you're going to make sure that you understand how bad is it before you get in there. You're going to do a 360-degree view of this building. You're going to walk around the building, make sure that there's nothing that is on the far side of the building that you're not even aware of, before you even attempt to make entry. And again, once you go in, and we teach classes on search and rescue and in-building searches, every step of the way you're reevaluating to make sure that you're not putting yourself in danger, and that the circumstances haven't changed so that now suddenly it is not safe to be in there. Did I miss anything, Chin? Chin? Did we lose Chin? Okay.
No, I'm not gone. I thumbs up to you.
Oh, okay. All right. Anyone else with any stories they want to share? Mike.
Hey, Patrick, loving this. This is really good. Very
Thank you.
thorough. I had a situation where I was at an event in Long Beach, and a lot of people were day drinking. And me and my friends just sat together at the bar, and the bartender just leaned over to me and said, "You see that guy at the end of the bar? He's had a little bit too much to drink. And I just want you to know that. And if he starts anything, will you have my back? You and your two friends." So there's an awareness that bartenders have, obviously, about who's had too much to drink, but also that there's sometimes you can help without even knowing, just being aware of the situation ahead of time. I don't know if he expected us to fight him or anything like that, but at least let him know that we could be trusted to help. And so sometimes you will fall into a situation that's totally unexpected, and somebody will kind of depend on you ahead of time. Secondly, I think there's something that we all do is we're looking for crazy drivers. And one of the things that I've learned to do, because I worked in a chemical plant, is learn some of the numbers on the trucks. So if you're going on 605, there's a lot of trucks, and you can start to learn if the trucks are full or empty by how they're bouncing, and how they're moving. And so if a truck is, people are trying to cut in front of the truck, people always are doing that. I just say, maybe that's got toxic chemicals in it. I'm going to slow down just in case, or I'm going to get in front of this guy just in case. But just being aware of how trucks ride on the freeway, and maybe learn those a few of those numbers. I think 1257 is gasoline, but there'll be symbols on those to say this is corrosive or something like that. A little bit more awareness of those trucks.
That's a really good point. I I am very wary of driving next to a big rig, because if that big rig loses control, the payload is going to swing in one direction or another, and I have a 50% chance of that swinging in my direction, and so I don't want to be there if that happens. So I will very quickly pass a truck or stay behind them if it doesn't look like it's safe to pass. And to the numbers thing, actually today I saw where I work a short freight train pass by, and on the back is this large metal cylinder that says chlorine gas on it. Went, ooh, that would be really bad if that thing derails right here. Anyone else who would like to share? Go ahead, Art.
Okay. Yeah, the many things that you mentioned, there were two that came to mind. Driving home and driving. And I've noticed that being that we're creatures of habit, at different times of the day, we learn one way to get home. If it's from work, you have one way of getting home. If it's from church, from the supermarket, wherever. And when something happens that you can't go past that point, people don't know what to do, because again, we're creatures of habit. They're used to being one way instead of just thinking, well, if I can't go this way, I'll just go around and, go 2 blocks down to the left or right or whatever. So a lot of times people in times of emergencies, all of a sudden they don't know what to do because we're creatures of habit. The other one is when we're driving or people driving or assuming that the other person is going to drive the same way that we drive. We need to remember that we're in a city that thousands of people from other countries are driving also, and they learn how to drive in their country. And so a lot of times it's different laws, different, some countries, the driver is on the right side versus the left side, and we tend to assume that they're going to do the right thing because they're driving in the United States, and those are the two things that come to my mind when I'm out there dealing with the public.
Yeah, that's great points. And to add on to that, there's been a marked increase in follow home burglaries. And so it's a good idea to know alternate ways, because if you suspect somebody's following you and then you go down an extra block and then over and you start making turns that don't make sense, that normally people wouldn't do, and this person is still following you, maybe figure out where your closest police station is and drive in that direction, not go home, or go to someplace public, someplace where you can be assured that you're not going to be the only person when whoever's following you catches up with you. I do want to point out someone also mentioned a couple things in the chat, that there's been scams where criminals put money on a parked car windshield, and they're trying to get someone to be off guard. So you see the money and go, oh, free money. And then you walk up and who knows what that criminal has intended for you. It certainly isn't going to be good, but you now probably didn't see them coming because they saw you and you didn't see them. And that's very much the case of many times what happens. So just be aware of things that seem too good to be true. I didn't even think about that. That seems like a good scam right there. Let's see. Someone mentioned that their cousin served in the Air Force, and rescued an elderly woman from her burning home. She would have died in there. However, the home burned to the ground, and the family sued because they said by entering the home, he increased the airflow, causing the house to burn down. So there's definitely people want to blame someone else for their misfortune. And if, and it doesn't even have to do with money, it's about, I can't be at fault for something bad that happened to me. I need someone else to blame. And this rescuer who saved me caused my house to burn down, and now they need to buy me a new house. Um, or, whatever that circumstance is. The Good Samaritan Act does very explicitly say in exchange for no compensation. And oftentimes what people will do is, oh, thank you for saving me. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? It seems innocuous at the time, but if they later on decide to sue, and they could have no intention of doing it, but they're talking to their friends, they're talking to someone, a lawyer, senses a payday, and convince them, hey, this person, they caused your house to burn down by breaking in to save you. And they look like they've got some money. We should sue them. Oh, you bought them a cup of coffee, so they didn't do this out of the goodness of their heart. They got something out of it. Puts you at risk by doing that. So just keep that in mind. No compensation. That's fine. I'm glad I was able to save you, but I don't drink coffee. Let's see, Nancy.
Hi there.
Hi.
So I'd like to address a couple of things. Firstly, the coyote situation, because there really is a coyote situation. Coyotes run the exact same path every single night. They live in the same house or the same den all the time. Whether that's under somebody's house and you don't even realize it, they live in and amongst us everywhere. And even if you only see them once in a blue moon, if you'd have waited a half an hour earlier or a half an hour later, they are at that same intersection on that same day around that same time. That's just what coyotes do. So, please don't be lulled into a sense of security because you don't see coyotes frequently, because they are there for sure. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would like to address is the driving thing. And I'm an educator. So I deal with high school students. You know where our high school students are learning how to drive? On video games. And that's why they think they can go out and get these high-powered cars and go do donuts in the middle of our intersections, and that they're just going to be the coolest thing since sliced bread. They don't know how to drive. And then many of them haven't driven in rain because, this is Southern California. We don't rain that frequently. And so they may have a license for 7, 8, 9 months and not drive on a wet surface. And then they get out there and they think they can go 80, 90 miles an hour, and they can't because they don't know how to stop. So these are things that we're seeing at the high school level. And it's frightening because they really truly believe that learning how to drive online is what real driving is going to be like. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents worth, and thank you.
Yeah, there's really no alternative to experience. And that's, you've been in a situation and you learn the hard way what you did wrong, or you were able to manage to figure it out while it's happening to you. I remember my first car wreck. I was driving up to Big Bear and didn't understand my vehicle. I misunderstood how the stability system worked and ended up turning it off. And I'm driving up there. I'm young, probably 18, and taking the curves way too fast and come up upon something, and I tap my brakes. My rear end slides out. I'm able to recover. and then I'd tap my brakes again. And this time I hit the guardrail. I now know, hey, I've got a sequential shift system here. I should have been downshifting instead of tapping the brakes. I learned after the fact. I also learned not to turn off the stability system in my car. But definitely experience, and you have to understand that becoming a victim of circumstance is not a bad thing as long as you learn from it. Mitch.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on two things. One, when you were talking, in situational awareness, we have two scenarios here. We have during a disaster or an emergency, and we have just being safe in our day-to-day life. So one, you were mentioning the follow home. One of the hacks that I have taught embedded in my wife and myself and my kids is when you're returning home, and not so much being followed home, but when you come home, don't just drive to your house and pull in the driveway. I tell them, drive the block, drive up and down, and know who, I teach them to be aware of the cars, our neighbors' cars. And if you see something that's not a car that's not normal for our neighborhood at 10 o'clock at night, most people are starting to be in bed, or 2 o'clock in the morning when you come home, you drive the entire length of the block and you see if there's people in the cars. That's just personal safety. But you're right, if you think you're being followed, know where your nearest police station is, know where your nearest fire station is, and go to a safe spot. And that was perfect that you said. Situational awareness during a disaster, let's talk about that, at a staging area. We talked about, paying attention to who's arriving at the staging area, and then look, and you're paying attention to who's around you. If you see somebody off in the outer perimeters, just hanging around, not checking in, not talking to people, you might want to pay attention to that person. You might want to have somebody go up and ask them if they need help. They might be disoriented, they might be in shock, or they might be scoping out the neighborhood for looting, after an event. So you want to be, definitely aware of that during a disaster, when you're doing your neighborhood searches, things like that. So those are the 2 points that I just wanted to point out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing I teach in the neighborhood security class I give. It's, it doesn't hurt to be nice and be acknowledging of people. Wave to people as you see them. The people who are up to bad things, they don't want to be noticed. If you notice them and you and your neighbors notice them and make it very clear that you've noticed them, they will not want to be there and they will leave. And if it is someone who wants to help out, then, just by acknowledging them, sometimes you might start that conversation. And, it turns out, hey, this person has skills we can utilize. And they're here for good things. Before we're losing people, so I just want to give a couple announcements. This Saturday, February 18th, from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. That's right, 12:30 p.m. We're gonna have our neighborhood pop-up drill in the West Adams area. It's gonna be at the Church of Christ. They have another event going on there, so we're not gonna have access to the parking lot. So get there early. You're gonna have to find side street parking, but that's located at 4959 West Adams Boulevard. And we do have an event here, and you can, if you go to ntp-la-pop-up drill-February 2023.eventbrite.com, you can find it, or you can go to our website. You can go to calendar.ntp-la.org to see all of our upcoming events. And while you're there, go ahead, and if you don't get our emails, go ahead and sign up at join.ntp-la.org. And that way you get our emails every month and know about the trainings we're putting on. And if you'd like to read some of the documentation that we've written, and especially if you'd like to give us feedback on it, go to documents.ntp-la.org. We have step-by-step guides on what to do right after an earthquake, how to set the staging area, how to deploy out damage assessment and incident response teams, and even how to form your own neighborhood disaster response team. And Jeffrey, do you want to talk about the Valley Disaster Fair?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Patrick. This coming up on the February 25th, we are co-hosting a fair at LA at Pierce College, starting at 9:30 and going till 3 p.m. There, Patrick and the CERT will be there. LA Fire Department will be there, tearing apart a car with the big jaws and having a bunch of other stuff. LAPD will be there with helicopters. There'll be there's about 42 booths coming. There'll be some food trucks coming. We're having some great speeches. We're having a lot of stop the bleed training. We're also having a lot of other trainings that are going on throughout the day. So we invite you to come to the the Pierce College. It's at the parking lot 8, which is where the sundial is and so you can just find that. And if you need to have it, you can reach out to Patrick's probably, and he has the flyer. You can connect with Patrick, and he has the flyer, and he can send you that. If you have any questions, if you want to be a part of it and volunteer, that's cool too. You can do that. There's plenty of volunteer opportunities for people, and we're helping shoot stages and do all kinds of stuff like that. So we invite you all to come. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. So we still have some time left. So if anybody else wants to share some of their lessons learned, I'll also put my email address in the chat. Go ahead and raise your hand and we'll take a few more. Janet.
Hi, thank you so much. This has been very informative. I wanted to talk about road rage because I've been a victim of road rage as a single woman. Driving on the 101 in the left lane, someone didn't like how I was driving, went around me and threw a hammer at my car. The other time I was driving home from work and I go through the canyon, Roscommare. I was past sunset and this guy didn't like how I was driving. He blocked my car in a Range Rover and it was just a little stop sign and he got out and he started punching my window. And it was very frightening, and had something happen at the park where this dog was off the leash and the dog jumped on me and he started screaming. It wasn't on a leash. And the lifeguard told me to start carrying pepper spray. But as a single woman, it was very frightening. And, I didn't open the door. I didn't get out. I didn't respond. But, I know there's a lot more incidents of road rage.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to comment on my own experience as a woman and driving home, especially. There was a homeless guy. I was driving home the other day and he kind of stopped in the middle of the street and looked at me. I didn't go home. I went around the block and parked and waited 10 minutes, just to be aware. I just needed to comment on that road rage situation. Thank you.
And that's definitely something that some of us who are not as big and potentially intimidating as others are, we can easily become victims because we're easier targets. And unfortunately, women generally are not as big and intimidating as men are. So you do have to be more cautious about things, because it's not that they're picking on you, it's because you're going to put up less of a fight, or at least you look like you're going to put up less of a fight than someone who's 6'5" and looks like they're made, they're built like a brick storehouse. So yes, but I've also seen women who take martial arts. I was medicing at a judo tournament, and the juniors are coming on to compete, And I think she was like, I don't know, 9 or 10. And the way she carried herself, I would not want to be caught in a dark alleyway with her. She intimidated me. And, she's probably 4 foot nothing. But the way she carried herself, she looked like she could take on the world. Um, so definitely how you carry yourself and take martial arts, learn how to protect yourself, learn skills, carry pepper spray, do things that give you advantages in case something unexpected happens.
Thank you.
Yeah. There was also, recently we heard about the Tesla driver who was um, uh, clearly had some serious rage issues. Anytime somebody beeped their horn at him, he got out and hit their car with a hammer, and he was finally arrested. But yeah, these things happen, unfortunately. Doreen.
Say what I have found really dangerous around are these mopeds that are on the street. They don't seem to have any type of horns, or they're not mandated to make any type of noise. And I have almost been hit several times. And I don't understand why they don't have some type of safety sound horn measure.
Yeah. People don't realize when they're driving a bike or a scooter that drivers are expecting and looking for other cars. And so they're at a distinct, even motorcycles are at a distinct disadvantage when you're driving. Not to mention that, unfortunately, some of them also don't follow the rules of the road. I've experienced coming across a green arrow and seeing an oncoming bike. And I went, what are the chances that this bike is actually going to stop like they're supposed to? Or they're going to blow the red light. And if I make this left turn, which I have a green arrow for, am I going to hit them? So I waited. Sure enough, the bike went through. I was about to cross the street. I get the green walk sign. I look to my left and I see an oncoming bike. Went, what are the chances this bike is going to stop at the red light? Or am I going to step out and get nailed by this bike? So I waited. Bike blew the stop sign, or the red light, went through. So, but certainly there's been people who have hit bikes, who have hit pedestrians, who have hit motorcycles because they didn't see them. And like I say, I always bet on incompetence or inattention or any of those over maliciousness. It's not that they want to hit someone. It's they're not paying attention. They don't see them. They're not aware they're there. And they assume that it's clear. They didn't check. And I mean, I've almost hit people the same way. It's probably just plain luck that I haven't. But it's things when you see that happen, you realize, oh my God, I almost hit this person. You hopefully learn from that experience and make sure you check and double check and triple check before you turn. Nikita.
Yes, hi. Thank you for the lecture. I have a short story to tell about the tunnel vision you told us.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a fine artist and I paint portraits, landscapes. And one day I decided to go and paint in downtown LA. And I like to paint nocturnes, so night cityscapes. I love doing this. So just in case, I brought my friend with me, because you know what the situation is in downtown LA. And we were standing on the sidewalk painting. It was, I don't remember the streets exactly, but it was a beautiful Highway 10 going into DTLA. It was very nice. And about 1 hour in, I was so focused on what I was doing, I didn't hear anything. I didn't look anywhere. And then I hear this screeching noise. It was so powerful. It was so loud. And my friend who was standing left to me, maybe 3 feet away from me, all of a sudden the car just runs into him. And he flies across the wall and goes downhill to Highway 10. So he flies in the air, does like 100 flips, and it all happened in a slow motion when you actually see this kind of stuff. I was so focused on what I was doing that my first thought was, quite frankly, man, I just wanted to paint. You know, it was kind of insane. And then a second thought, I was like, okay, I have to do something about it. So I looked up and I saw the street name. I called 911, and I did it all even before seeing what happened to my friend. It was just like, I have to do this right away. And the firefighters came a minute after, then the police, and then the ambulance. I think second and third minute, it was very quick because it was in the middle of the city. And my friend was actually fine. He didn't break a bone because he had a very big hoodie and a big cargo pants. It was all very like sort of like it worked like a pillow. And the heel also worked like a cushion because I guess it was soft landing, but it was very frightening. The car was destroyed. The driver was drunk, I suppose, and he didn't. Maybe he looked at us, I don't know, and he didn't make a turn. And he went straight to my friend. And what happened is my friend was standing on the sidewalk, so the car went up a little bit on the angle and hit him right in the buttocks. So it didn't hit him in the legs, it didn't hit him in the back. It was right at the buttocks, and so he flew in the air. It catapulted him. If it went in towards my direction, I was standing sideways. It would break my chins. I would fly to the road. So that was a very interesting experience. And he was fine after all. So that was the tunnel vision.
Yeah. It doesn't take much and it happens very fast. That's why if you can just see it coming, and sometimes you can't, but if you can, it gives you that split second to do something about it. Or, hopefully you get lucky and you get hit in the buttocks and you get thrown up in the air and you land on a soft, cushy, plush hoodie. So good to hear that your friend was okay. Daniel.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to I want to go back to this rage issue. I ride a lot of trains and buses in LA, and I encounter a lot of rage situations. And over the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, I've probably gone through situations where I've had to de-escalate from a potential or almost imminent confrontation just because I was aware that it was coming at me, and because of the way I was able to conduct myself, or the way or an exit strategy to where I was able to exit from that situation that was coming up. One situation that comes up though was we get back to the defensive situation that the woman was talking about. I can't remember her name, when she was talking about the road rage with the hammer. You always want, if you can, my experience is that you want to de-escalate. Hey man, I don't want any trouble, okay. And these incidences that I've had over the last year and a half or so have always been over nothing. It was a glance, and all of a sudden somebody wants to fight. Really ridiculous types of situations that I was able to extract myself from. There was one situation though that was kind of clear where if I wasn't able to de-escalate and I wasn't able to escape, I was sitting in the back of the bus on Ventura Boulevard in the Encino area. There were only a few people on the bus. Guy towards the front of the bus starts glancing back at me in my way towards the back. He comes strolling back my direction. I won't go over all the details and be the broad strokes. And he starts looking at me and he kind of gives me this look like, what's up? And I had dark glasses on, so I kind of gave him a very direct glance of non-intimidation. I see you, you see me. And I just said, hey, how you doing? Or something to that effect. And he kept looking at me, and then I saw something in his hand. It looked like a nail file. So now I'm aware. I'm not surprised. He's not going to ambush me, but there's nowhere for me to go. So now I'm thinking to myself, okay, just watch that hand. Keep an eye on that hand. If he's coming, you go. You don't hesitate. You jump. If he jumps, you jump. And just for notification, I always carry a folder on me, a folding knife. As long as it's not in a non-permissible environment, I always have a folding knife on me. Now I carry pepper spray because if you got to go hands-on, I don't want to go hands-on. If I can spray somebody that's getting ready to attack me, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to extract myself from that situation. In this particular situation, the guy, I thought it was imminent. I thought this guy was coming. I didn't know why he was coming. He said to me again, like, what's up? Like he wanted to go. And I looked at him and I gave him like a Arnold Schwarzenegger stare. And I said, I don't have any problem with you. And he backed away. And nothing happened. A couple of stops later, he got off the bus. But if I had been meek, if I had been intimidated, and I could see how, maybe if that was a woman or somebody else, we were about the same size. I wasn't as worried about it. I had already come to terms with the fact that we're getting ready to go. And I'm not going to be the one on the news that's going to be the victim that got stabbed. Because I see him right in my face. And if we're going, we're going to go. Nothing happened. But just to my point is that a lot of times you can de-escalate. And a lot of times, the other thing I would say about de-escalation and just the rage that I see on the trains and the buses nowadays is always try to keep your distance, your space. Mm-hmm. You don't want to stand right next to somebody. You don't want to stand on the edge of the platform at the train station. It's not a place you want to be. I've seen people on the edge, and I've seen people come up to like try to get ready to shove somebody. You'd want to step back. These are just things that I've observed. I live near Wilshire in Vermont, near the train station, and I'm always very mindful of everybody that's around me. I can always keep my distance. If anyone comes close to me, I, just move away, a little bit evasive. And there was something on the news maybe a few months ago, and a guy was standing in front of Chipotle on right there where the train station is. I get on that train all the time, and he was on his phone. What I call code white. Code white is you're just not paying attention to anything. He's on his phone. Guy is standing right next to him, and just out of nowhere, a haymaker, and knocks him out cold. And, there's something that happened and does happen. So distance and de-escalation, they go a long way. I could tell you a bunch of stories that I've had in the last year and a half, but I won't bore you. That was the one that I thought that was the most imminent, the one that I had with that on that bus. And the reason I brought that one up is because I was cornered. There was no back door. There was no help. It was only me, and I was my own responder at that moment in time. And so, like for the lady that was on, yeah, I encourage you, carry pepper spray. If that was one of my daughters that was in the back of that bus, no disrespect to any martial art, but, my daughters are, 100 pounds sopping wet. And you don't want to go hands-on if you don't have to anyway. So, yeah, get it and deploy it.
Yeah. Just realize that pepper spray in a closed environment is going to get you too.
Yeah, I realize that, and that's where that whole, that distance thing comes into play. You might get some of the residue, but I would think that the consequence of not having it could be much worse.
I'm not saying don't use it. It's be aware you're going to get some of it.
Oh,
too.
Yeah.
But have that exit strategy. So what am I going to do? If this guy comes at me, I'm going to pepper spray him. And then that exit is 5 feet to my left or to my right. I need to make a beeline for it and push through the doors and get out of here.
Oh, for sure. This guy was going at it. This whole thing was going on for, 10, 15 minutes on the bus. So I had plenty of time to think.
Yeah.
What am I going to do if he comes? And how am I going to get myself out of it if he comes? I had plenty of time to think about it. That was the thing that was on my side as well, is there was no element of surprise. He wasn't ambushing me.
Yeah.
But those are my two bits.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Daniel. Art.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Mike earlier said about trailer trucks, tankers, especially when they carry those hazardous diamonds. Fireman friend of mine said, instead of trying to remember which numbers mean what, he said, anything above 0, consider it a hazard. And that way you don't have to remember what is what. Just if it's above zero, it's a hazard of some kind. Otherwise, they wouldn't have those numbers on there. That's it. Just
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Anyone else want to share any stories or lessons learned, or we're done for the night?
This is Orlando here. May I
Hey,
share?
Orlando. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to mention about fraud going on at all kinds of many different ways, and particularly fraud in the banks.
Fraud. Okay.
Fraud, yes. Recently, my gardener came running to me. He was nervous. He said, I was just robbed. I went to the bank and withdrew some money, and I continued my work. I did at least two more gardening jobs before these guys came to me and at gunpoint told me, give us the money. And he said, I don't have any money. Oh, yes. He says, you have the money. Remember, you made a withdrawal from that branch located, and they gave him all the details. So he didn't have a choice. He just gave them the money, but he was very, very scared. And he came to me and he says, this is what is happening to me. And I couldn't think of anything else but run to you because I needed some kind of emotional support to help me get out of this scary situation. I said, okay, I'm glad you did. Calm down. This thing, it's all about money. Fortunately, I said, you are safe, and you, one way or another, you are going to replace that money. By working, I'm going to help you with some, but everything is going to be okay. But it made me think that there is a lot of things going on, not only at the tellers, but the banks themselves. These people are seeing who are going into the bank, and they see what kind of activity they're realizing in there, and they see that they are making withdrawals. So we should be aware, not only that, but we may also consider that some of those tellers may be connected with the criminals, and they give signals indicating this guy has a lot of money with him, and they follow him purposely. So I personally feel that when you come out of the bank, be very aware of who is around you. And particularly when you are driving home, see who is driving behind you, because they may be following you and try to learn where you are living. And when, before you know, in the middle of the night, they're going to be forcing your doors and maybe cause you some harm. So fraud is incredible right now. It's going on at many, many different levels, and we should be aware of what we are doing, particularly when we go and make withdrawals at the bank. That's all I wanted to say.
That's actually armed robbery, not
Yes.
fraud. Fraud is someone has convinced you to give them your money, probably not even at armed insistence, but you're buying something and you get scammed out of it.
Yes, I understand that, and of course.
Or one thing I love is the people who have the little family icons on the back of their vehicle with the names.
Yes.
And hey, I'm a friend of Betty. Yeah, your daughter. Yeah. It's like, oh, great, you just gave the people exactly what they need to know, more information about you than they should.
That's right.
Take advantage of that.
Yes.
Thanks, Orlando.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. Obviously, you have other things you could be doing with your time, so we definitely appreciate you coming here. We hope that you learned a lot and you can take this to heart and be safer out there.
Thank you.
And like I said, hope to see you at the drill on the 18th or at the disaster fair on the 25th. And come say hello.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank
For
you.
real. Be safe. It's a lot happening in LA.
Good night, all.
Whatever moment Godzilla coming. Get
We'll
ready,
we'll see
guys.
Godzilla coming a good distance away, hopefully. I don't know that we can do anything about that one, though.
No. Okay. Bye, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.